This episode of The Unstarving Musician is powered by liner notes. Learn from the hundreds of musicians and industry professionals I've spoken with for The Unstarving Musician on topics such as marketing, songwriting, touring, sync licensing, and much more. Sign up for liner notes at unstarvingmusician.com. It's an email newsletter from yours truly in which I share some of the best knowledge gems garnered from the many conversations featured on The Unstarving Musician. You'll also be privy to the latest podcast episodes and liner notes subscriber exclusives. Sign up at unstarvingmusician.com. It's free and you can unsubscribe at any time. This is The Unstarving Musician. I'm your host, Rabanzo. This is my podcast. It features interviews with independent music artists and industry professionals and relevant special topic episodes featuring yours truly, all intended to help indie musicians better understand the marketing, business, and creative processes that empower us to do more of what we love, make music. The Unstarving Musician needs your support. You can support The Unstarving Musician in many ways. You can follow us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your audio. You can tell a friend about the podcast. That would be amazing. Or you can visit us at unstarvingmusician.com/crowd sponsor or the show notes for this episode to learn about the many ways of offering your support. We appreciate it. This podcast is also about supporting independent musicians, and supporting you involves sharing resources that could help you along your journey. Sometimes that's other podcasts, like Gig Gab, the show for working musicians. It's hosted by Dave Hamilton and Paul Kent, both of whom are good friends and both of whom have been featured on The Unstarving Musician. Gig Gab takes a fascinating and entertaining look at the behind-the-scenes aspect of what it takes to put a live band on stage. Dave and Paul discuss everything from booking the gigs, getting paid, working with the crowd, prepping the band, learning the material, and managing the personalities involved. And while the show is said to be for musicians, a surprisingly sizable chunk of their audience are music fans who just love hearing about how live music is made. So if you're a fan of live music, playing it or watching it be played, be sure to check out Gig Gab at giggabpodcast.com or wherever you get your podcasts. So I'm in Arlington, Texas today, where I have family and many friends. And yes, recording remotely. It's not bad weather here. It was a little cold when I got here, but it's all good. I'll be returning to my home base of Querétaro soon. I think the weather's a little more summery there at the moment. But hey, it's all good. I love coming back to Texas to see my friends and fam. My guest, Joshua Van Ness, was first featured in episode 134 of The Unstarving Musician. The singer-songwriter, guitarist, drummer is a New Jersey native. He's performed with many bands and as a solo artist. For the last 8 years, he's been a member of a band called The Wag. As you'll hear in our conversation, Joshua has strong sentiment for The Wag. Their music is very upbeat and positive, which Joshua says he had a hard time with in the beginning. That was a dark time for him, though. But it seems that The Wag was there for his journey toward lighter days. The Wag is releasing a new EP called Blue Bottles and Copper Coins. If you're in Lakewood, New Jersey, you can catch their album release and 25th anniversary show at the Strand Theater on March 25th. You can get tickets to that spectacular at wag.com. No. Not at wag.com, at thewagband.com. And that show is March 25th of 2023. Whether performing in local establishments or opening for national acts like Jason Mraz, Rick Springfield, Gavin DeGraw, Phillip Phillips, John Cafferty, Peter Tork, and Jefferson Starship, you're always guaranteed a Class A performance filled with catchy melodies, beautiful harmonies, and exciting showmanship from The Wag. They have a monthly residence at the Coffee House in Edison, New Jersey. The band has done regional and international tours in England, Canada, and Japan. The Wag has also added an acoustic set to their repertoire, further diversifying their sound and allowing them to reach a larger audience. The Wag also reach diverse audiences by doing tribute shows, so they're more than just an indie original band, they are a true working band. Joshua is also about to embark on his first tour in the UK with the WAG. He is one of these guys that is not only talented, he looks cool when he's on stage. He has a great speaking voice. If you're listening, Joshua, and I hope you are, maybe you should host a podcast with that voice of yours. In this conversation, Joshua and I talk marketing of the new release by the WAG, endorsements, the WAG's mixed business model, merchandising, social marketing, and much, much more. Check out their music, merch, and tour dates at thewagband.com. Please enjoy my conversation with Joshua Van Ness. All right, man. Thanks for joining me again for a redo of our previous conversation.
Yeah, no worries, man. It's always a pleasure speaking with you. I like podcasts. I really like your podcasts, and I like chatting with you, man. So,
Likewise,
it's cool.
I on the upside of having to do it over, I was like, well, I get to talk to Joshua again. There's nothing bad about
that. It's kind of weird, man. The first time we chatted was like a couple months before the world shut down. Yeah. And then if you look at the calendar, it's almost 3 years to the day since the world shut down, like for the first time. So the timing is a little eerie. Well, I think we'll fare better this time, though.
Yes. I can't believe it. I wrote down in our first attempt that we last spoke in December 6th of 2019. And I don't know for sure if it probably is the date because I was able to look at my calendar. But yes, a lot has happened. And the most exciting of which is you have a new release with your band, The WAG. And we tried to do this for those who are listening about, 3 or 4 weeks ago, but I ran into issues with the most important audio file, which was Josh's side of the conversation. And at that time, the WAG had a new single out, These Boots Are Made for Walking, which is on a forthcoming album. And tell me if I have the title correct, Blue Bottles and Copper Coins. Is that right?
That is correct. Yes. Thank you.
And it would appear, because you sent me a preview, which sounds nice, by the way. I haven't had a chance to listen to the whole thing. I listened to a couple of songs, and it sounds great. So it's a little more exciting today. It sounds like you're on the precipice of releasing it.
Yeah, we're, it's a week away tomorrow, actually. Yeah. So we released the album on March 25th. So by the time this airs, it'll be out.
Fantastic.
Yeah, we're really excited about it.
I don't have the schedule in front of me, but I think that this episode may release the same day. I'm not sure if that's a good thing, but anyway, it'll be cool if it does.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
You guys will probably be very busy with all the promo efforts going on. I was going to say, why don't you tell me about some of the things that you have in store for the release day in terms of, spreading the news? I would be really interested in to hear what you guys have planned.
Sure. Well, we're kind of in it already, to be honest with you. We've been sort of doing all the promotional work and making the rounds and doing a lot of interviews. And we've been fortunate enough to have the album reviewed by a few different sources. And, the machine is in motion, so to speak. That day, though, is going to be a big day. We're actually not only celebrating the release of the album, but we're also going to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the band. So on March 25th, the album will come out. And we also have a show at a place called the Strand Theater here in Lakewood, New Jersey. It's a beautiful 100-year-old theater. We've got some great bands that are playing with us, Morningside Lane and Lisa Bouchel. And we're bringing some additional musicians on to kind of help round out the sound and just put on a bigger show. It's, again, it's kind of a bigger venue. So we're going to rise up to that occasion and really just kind of celebrate all the hard work that's gone in to making this happen over the last couple of years.
That is super exciting. I remember, 25 years. Now, maybe you can talk a little bit about the history for what it might be worth, those who are listening. I mean, I guess the audiences that we get are likely a little bit diverse in why they listen. Sometimes they just like listening to me, but mostly they like listening to what other artists and bands are doing, what's working, what's not. But I think for you to talk about the 25-year journey of the band and your interaction during that time might be of some interest too.
Yeah, well, I mean, I have an interesting perspective because this summer will be 8 years in the band for me. So the band was started 25 years ago, but I've only been around for 8 years. I'm the new guy, 8 years in. It started with Brian and Alicia, who are husband and wife. Actually, the band started right around the time they got married, believe it or not. They got married and then just shortly after put this band together. And I think it was a project of love and passion, obviously not just for one another, but for music and performing. And the band, they found a original guitarist Dan and a drummer Brian Mowry, who actually became family. So Brian Mowry actually married Alicia Van Sant's sister,
Oh, wow.
and not to get too heavy, but he passed away. I want to say like a week after they got married. So 14 years into the band, they lose their drummer, who's also a family member.
Oh, that's
And yeah, I mean, I can't even imagine. And, I think they were left kind of soul searching whether or not it was something they want to continue on with. And, luckily, that answer was yes. They linked up with Don Lee, who's in the band now. He's been in the band for about 10 years and kind of kicked around with different fill-in drummers, and they even had a percussionist by the name of Ariel, who now lives in San Diego. But she would play bongos with them, and they would kind of perform quasi-acoustic. And so around that time, I was actually doing gigs in the same circles with them. Like I think I opened for them a couple times, and I said, "Listen, if you ever have any big gigs and you don't want to do this acoustic thing, I'm actually a drummer. I'd love to sit in with you guys." They actually called me up for their 500th gig. So their 500th gig was my first gig. I never really got the call or the conversation that said, "Hey, you're in the band." But I do recall being told I can't leave. So the rest is kind of history, I guess.
wow.
Yeah, and that's obviously a very it's 25 years and a minute and a half or what have you. There's a lot in between and around that, but I mean, just to not many bands get a 25th anniversary, and the bands that do get a 25th anniversary, you're talking about the greats. So not that I put us in that category, but I just think it's very special that this band has been able to endure. And while I think we all wish their original drummer Brian was still here with us, I think the band's better than it's ever been right now. I think we're having a great time, and we're firing on all cylinders and being incredibly creative, which is what's most important to me.
Wow. And I know it's quite a ways back in the rear view now, but that is a crushing story about Brian. It's nice that I can kind of picture you meeting them whenever you did in time, and letting them know you're a drummer. I'm sort of picturing this sharp dressed guy that you are in some of the
Thank
performing
you.
videos and pictures that you do. And they're like, well, he looks, I'm thinking that they may have thought, well, he looks cool, we should call him.
Well, it's funny you say that because they didn't know me as a drummer at all. I mean, I kind of stopped drumming for about a decade,
Wow.
to focus more on being a songwriter and a front man. But drumming has always been what I do best and most naturally. So yeah, it worked out, and I found them at a really dark time in my life. I was kind of coming to grips with the fact that my marriage was ending, and oddly enough, they kind of, I was almost offended when I first heard them, because anyone who's heard us, and if you guys go out and find our music now, we're a very positive, uplifting kind of band. I guess I was in such a dark place that I just didn't get it. I almost thought it was a gimmick, um, but after running in circles with them for a while, I realized that they have a sound. The sound of their voices blending together is really something special, and they write great songs. And now that I've been in the band for 8 years, it's not that they're not being real. They have lives and they have problems just like everyone else, but they make a choice to be positive, and I'm really happy to be a part of that.
Yeah, that's cool. I can see that in the little bit of music and the video that I watched for these boots are made for walking. you can hear it, you can see it, you can feel it when you listen to the music, that they have this positive vibe. You're reminding me of a friend from the San Francisco Bay Area. He's one of my best friends, and we played together for probably almost 10 years before the wife and I moved to Panama. But he's like super positive all the time, and maybe to the point of being a coping mechanism sometimes. But
Sure.
I'm I'm a positive person, but sometimes you meet people and it's just a little overkill for you. And I sometimes find myself saying,
Yeah.
could you dial it down just a little bit
Could you tone that
today?
down a bit?
Yeah, yeah, but it's nice to be around those people.
It is, and again, I can't express enough like how dark of a place I was in, and I thank God that I or the universe or whatever, that I was put in the same space as them, because I'm capable of not being a perfect human, and going down some bad paths, and they really buoyed me. So I'll forever be in debt to them for that.
That's so nice. I didn't know that, and I may not have ever known that part of it had we not been afforded this opportunity to redo our last very recent conversation. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, my pleasure.
As I mentioned, I watched the video for These Boots Are Made for Walking, and it's really cool. It's whimsical, and it sounds great. But I alluded to this a moment ago, but I just wanted to tell you, you look so cool when you're playing drums. You dress cool. You look cool. You do some of the tricks. It's nice.
Thanks, man. Thanks. It's funny. The tricks are kind of bad habits, like I'm not, I take a lot of pride in not being a very flashy drummer, but I've picked up this stick twirling thing that's kind of like a timing mechanism. It's almost the same as me counting 1, 2, 3, 4. Like, I know that there's a certain amount of rotations or a certain amount of feel that happens when I do stuff like that. And it keeps me locked in. But thank you, man. I try to, we kind of have a rule in the band, we always want to look better than our audience. I'm enjoying getting to, a different stage of my life where it's okay for me to not look like a kid, kind of thing,
Mhm.
and figure why not run with it? Why not lean into it?
Yeah, yeah, you're doing a good job with it. And I never thought about the stick twirling thing as a timekeeper, and I'm sure you're not the only drummer, and probably many before us have done that. And it's funny, I can twirl sticks, but I can't. You have that very classic way of doing it that I cannot do. I can do it between I think my thumb and my index finger, and my hand actually if you were watching me twirl, my palm would be facing you, which it's
Oh, wow.
it's more movement than you need when you're on the kit, right?
Yeah.
But I'm inspired to work on it though.
I almost feel guilty about that, but hey, man, if it works for you, go for it.
Right. Are you guys still gearing up for a regional tour in the UK with the release?
Yes, we are. It's going to be a very short jaunt. We're probably going to be there for about 9 or 10 days, and we'll probably play about 5 times. I think we have 3 gigs confirmed right now, and a couple more that are kind of getting ready to be solidified. So, yeah, that's coming about. Please don't ask me where they are, because I'm terrible like that. I know that I'm going to the UK in June, and I know that we've got some gigs lined up, but you can check out thewagband.com for more information on that.
Perfect. I was going to mention the same, lest I forget to do it in the intro for the episode, but thanks for that.
Yeah.
And have you played in the UK before? Are you excited?
No, the band has been to the UK. They went to the UK before I joined. They actually went to the UK before I joined, and they went to Japan right around the time I started playing with them, but I did not go on that trip. So this will be my second time in the UK. This will be my first time performing. So I'm pretty excited about it.
That's nice. Have you personally done any touring that wasn't close to home in the past?
I've been all over the country. I don't know what you consider close to home, but I've toured the country a few times. Matter of fact, my first touring experience ever. And by the way, if there's any young musicians listening, don't do what I'm about to say.
Uh,
um, the first tour I ever went on was about 4 months, and I want to say it was like 42 cities or something like that.
oh, wow.
42 cities, probably like 39 states. I personally think that's way too long for any band to be on the road. It's certainly too long for an independent band to be on the road. But, at the same time, it was the time of my life, but yeah, I've been all over the United States, and I've performed a bit in Canada. I've performed, believe it or not, I've performed in Aruba. So, I've been around a bit, but again, this will be my first time performing in the UK. The sticks that I use actually are made in the UK, so I'm hoping to possibly meet up with some of that crew as well, which will be pretty cool.
Remind me the brand of sticks you used.
Yeah, I use a brand called Collision. Man, they make some really, really great, really durable drumsticks. I'm not the kind of guy that lifts my hands up over my head a lot, but I hit pretty hard, and these things are just indestructible.
Nice. And you're an endorsee for Collision, aren't you?
I am, yes.
Very
Yeah,
nice.
I've been with them probably since right around the time we spoke last. Like it might have been, I want to say it was in between December and March when the world shut down. So somewhere in that like January, February period, I probably signed on with them.
I think so, because I, for some reason, remember that you were telling me about them, extolling the virtues of them. I've not looked for them. I've been a Vic Firth. Now I'm trying to remember the specific stick I use. It's actually a jazz stick, which is funny because I'm not a jazz player, and they're not as small as that might imply, which may sound stupid to any jazz player that's listening.
Are they 7As?
After we talk today, I'll let you know. I can't
Yeah,
remember, and I don't think
we're
there's
getting
7As.
geeky now.
Yeah, I know, but anyway, I remember you talking about the sticks to me. We were chatting or something. You had recommended them, so that's cool that you've been with them all this time. And since we're talking about endorsements, last time we spoke, which was not the last time anyone heard us speak, nor will they, because of technical issues we had. I asked you a little bit about endorsements, and I think I asked, do you actively solicit them from time to time, or did you at that time? But we talked a little bit about, I believe that it had sort of come out of an attendance that you did for one of the NAMM shows.
Yeah.
But I guess one of the things I was thinking about the question again today is it's funny. I'm interested in the topic, and I'll ask about it occasionally, and then I just kind of forget about it. But I really am interested in, like, if you can tell the story, the NAMM story, for listeners, because I think it might give them some ideas. But also, I would love to hear, like, if I or someone listening to the podcast wanted to pursue or dip their toe into the waters of endorsements
Sure.
and try and figure out how to do that. How would you recommend they start?
Yeah, well, I've got some pretty strong thoughts about it because I went into it really for the wrong reasons, and what I got out of it has been so much better than what I anticipated. So here's what I would say: if you're considering, if you're wondering, should I seek out endorsement deals, I would say the following: don't do it because you think you're going to get free stuff, and don't do it because you think it's going to somehow boost your profile or make you better known. And I'll be honest with you, the latter is really why I was interested in doing it. I thought somehow that, if I had some brands behind me, that, it would bump my followers up or make me seem more legitimate or whatever. And looking back, that was pretty naive of me. That was pretty stupid.
Wait, are you telling me they don't just blast their entire social media following with the fact that Joshua Van Ness is now an endorsee of our drumsticks?
Well, I'll say this. I've got 5 relationships right now. I call them relationships. So there's 5 different products, 5 different manufacturers that I have a relationship with, and I endorse their solutions. And what I can say, I call them relationships because they're all valuable to me and I'm all valuable to them, but for different reasons. Some of them do a pretty nice job of saying, of blasting me on their social media and promoting me. Some of them have been able to support me for gigs I've been doing around the country. The second time I went to NAMM, I actually put together a showcase at the House of Blues. Attack Drumheads sent me a whole set of drumheads.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them, one of the relationships I have, and actually the first relationship that I gained, and I'll talk about that more in a second, is with a company called Sky Gel Damper Pads. They make like gels that you can put on your drum heads to dampen your drum heads. That's just a handshake. There's no contract, there's no obligation there, but I promote the heck out of them and they look out for me. I place an order, and I probably shouldn't say this publicly, but just being that we're having the discussion, it's us musicians. If I order 3 cases of their gels, usually 6 show up. You know what I mean? Like there's different things about every relationship that I have that are incredibly valuable. And what I would say to you is that, or anyone who's considering doing this, don't just do it because you think it's going to boost your profile. Don't just do it because you think it's going to make you more legitimate. Do it for products that you can stand behind, and do it for things that you're going to be buying anyway. I knew I was going to be buying a couple drum kits, so I got a drum endorsement. I knew that, I gig a lot. I go through drumsticks a lot. A drumstick endorsement deal makes sense for me, and I think if you approach it that way, both you and the company that you're endorsing, and by the way, let's get that straight, they're not endorsing you as much as you're endorsing them. But I think that will maximize the impact of that relationship. So that's kind of my overall arching look at it. To answer your question about my experience at NAMM, that's where I met Skygel damper pads. They had a small booth, and honestly, I didn't want anything from them. I just went and checked out their product, and they had a unique approach to the gels. Everyone's used Moon gels and things like that. It's not a new product, but they're able to provide different sizes and sort of an oval shape, so that if you really want to bury it into the rim so that you're barely using it, you can. So I enjoy that. So anyway, I just, I sat and listened to the guy demonstrate the product, and, he started asking me about what I was doing there. And I told him, just my first time here, just want to meet some people. And I told him I booked a few gigs while I was out there. And it's like, well, here, try these at your gig and tell me if you like them. I loved them, came back the next day and told him how much I enjoyed the product, didn't expect anything. And he's like, well, why don't we start this relationship where we can cross promote for one another? And, that was 4 years ago, and we still have a great relationship. Some of the other really all the other relationships that I have are a lot more formal than that, but they don't have to be. So I hope I answered your question. I mean, I think, again, just kind of having open and honest dialogue with people, and pursuing products that, you would buy even if someone didn't put your name on them, or if they didn't, blast you on your social media or what have you. I think that's the key, because there's nothing worse than being in a relationship with someone you don't want to be in a relationship with, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah.
Exactly. Is it safe to say that if you are interested in an endorsement with someone like this, or whatever the company is, that you just approach them in a manner that lets them know you really dig their product? You'd love to know more about how you can get involved in whatever they call the relationship. Maybe everyone calls it an endorsement, and that you'd love to promote their products.
Yeah, it's a little different for every company. I would say this: if you dig the product, use the product. They all love it if you're kind of shouting them out before there's a relationship.
Yeah.
If you kind of show them, okay, this is your following, this is your group, and you're already telling this following in your group how much that you enjoy this product. That's a nice kind of, goodwill gesture, so to speak.
That makes sense.
Like I said, some of them will do sort of an informal handshake with you, and some of them have an application process. It can vary. I will say this, though. One thing that scares me a little bit is that there are companies that are starting to use the whole endorsee thing as kind of a go-to-market plan, for lack of better words, and I'm not going to name any brands, but there's some brands out there that will endorse anyone, or that will allow anyone to be an endorsee. And I don't know, to me, I mean, I guess if you love the product, it doesn't matter. But to me, that kind of defeats the purpose. I'd like to feel as if some thought went into this and there was some exclusivity,
Sure.
But, if that's not a concern for you, then go for it.
Yep, I can see that. And I have seen solicitations from just kind of at random for
Hmm.
companies that are looking for that type of support, and have seen some, and participated in one recently that was very go to market
Yeah.
strategy. So
Did it
yeah,
work for
but
you?
yeah, I mean, I got a
Okay.
night. It was to test a microphone out, and I watched some of the um, other artists who were doing videos for them as part of the deal, music
Hmm.
videos for them. And it was pretty all really nice stuff. I mean, I thought the quality of work that others were doing were better than what I could do. But anyway, they sent me a cool mic, and I did I did less video time than they asked for, and it
Okay.
appeared to me that I haven't entirely closed the loop, but it appeared to me they were more than satisfied.
Oh, that's great.
so, and so they just went ahead and met their end of the commitment, and basically gave me a nice piece of gear, fun piece of gear, and yeah, it worked out pretty well. But I could see the benefits or the different viewpoints on, like, I mean, that was basically like to test a product, review a product if I wanted to
Right.
optionally, and show it off. But I could see the value and the fun of doing it the other way, where it's like, this is a product I already know about. Like, I sometimes dream about, like, how awesome would it be to be I mean, I'll start small here, but like a Vic Firth endorsee. That's not small
Sure.
though, is it?
No,
Or a
it's not.
No, or a Gretsch or Sabian.
Yeah.
I'll use all this kind of gear. These are huge though, but I can see that, what, maybe especially for someone like me, it's like, well, go find some of the smaller companies and see if they're interested in relationships. But
Well,
yeah, thanks
so
for
there's two
sharing that.
things that I want to hit on that you just talked about. The first thing is that I'm glad you told your story about the microphones, because, I gave my perspective and I gave my opinion, but it's just like anything else. There's no rules, and any rules that do exist were made to be broken. So, if the path that you took is beneficial to you, then do it. I can imagine that being beneficial to a lot of your listeners. So, just because I said, what my experience was and what I prefer, that's, it's by no means the law, so to speak. And then the other thing is that you touched upon something interesting. You talked about the major brands, Vic Firth, Sabian, so forth. I deliberately took the approach that I wanted to work with the smaller companies. It's just my personality. I kind of like the concept of the underdog, and having a relationship where we can grow together.
Hmm.
So, that was a method that I took. That was the approach that I took. Now that I'm a couple years into this journey, and that, I know some more people now, you might be surprised at how small some of these big companies are. You know, Zildjian, for example, is a relatively small family operated company. And I could be speaking out of turn, but I want to say Zildjian's actually tied to Vic Firth. Just neither here nor there. But my point is, these musical manufacturing companies are not all that big. So sometimes it's just about knowing the right person at those places. But you also have to understand that if you're looking at a Vic Firth, if you're looking at Gretsch, if you're looking at Yamaha, they're going to really want someone who's got a strong social media presence. And when I say strong, I mean, my 3,000 followers is probably not going to cut it. You know what I mean? Like, they want someone who's more of I don't want to say a household name, because I don't think most working musicians are household names, but they're definitely going to want someone who's got more of a national and possibly international reach to have that type of relationship with. Doesn't mean that it's unattainable. It just means that there's a different level of commitment involved.
Sure. And you're right. So I would be like a contradiction if I were so fortunate to get a Vic Firth relationship, because since 2010, they've been part of the Zildjian family.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
So yeah, it's good to know. I guess a case in, or brings to mind that it's good to know the history of companies. And I'm totally with you. I'm a very I really love the underdog stories as well. And quite frankly, I would be intimidated. But it's nice that you said some of these companies aren't as big as you think. But frankly, I'd be personally intimidated to try and approach anyone that is like a household name in instruments of any kind. But yeah, I'm sure stranger things have happened than
Yeah.
for some small fry to get an endorsement with a big company.
I had lunch with a guy who is a rep. Actually, he's an artist relationship guy for one of the household names in music manufacturing, one of the household symbols.
Mm.
And it wasn't because I was looking for an endorsement. I was looking to pick his brain on other things. And you're right. It was weird because, I'm talking about my conversation and he's telling me, I'm telling him about some of the bands that I'm into. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember they played at the 10,000 seat arena down the street, and I brought him cymbals. It's
Uh-huh.
so it's funny. Like again, they tend to be very small, close knit type operations, but yeah, the echelon of talent that they're dealing with is pretty impressive.
Well, thanks for sharing all that. I think this will qualify as the best conversation I've had on the topic. And it's not the first, but it's just thinking about it some more and having reflected on the one that we were having not too long ago and just sort of think about what are some other things I'd like to ask. So that's nice.
Sure.
I think this might have been something I gathered through some note taking before the last time we spoke. And it pertains to the business model of the WAG band, the WAG.
Mhm.
And you have a business model that includes original music as well as themed covers and tribute shows, or am I mixing that up with you?
No, that's 100% accurate. Absolutely.
And with the release of the album, does one necessarily kind of go to the side for very long, or is it just something that the band is still really enjoying? And what lessons, I guess, are available to share in the kind of mixed model?
That's a really cool question. I'm glad you asked it because it's one of the things that I enjoyed the most about the WAG. This is my job at the moment. I don't think it's any secret. It's really hard to make money as an independent original band. Not impossible. Matter of fact, the WAG's gotten pretty good at it, all things considered. But even still, if you're not a national headliner, it's really hard to command the type of money that will sustain you as an individual or a band. And I don't know that this was the driver for this. I think it was more of a love for music, to be honest with you, but it has turned into a pretty nice business model. As you said, we are able to do, we could do a whole cover show. We could do a whole 3-4 set cover show. And then we also have different themed shows that we do. We all enjoy the music of the Beatles, so we do tributes to the Beatles from time to time. And we've also started doing Halloween and Christmas themed shows, which interestingly enough actually combine a mixture of cover songs and original songs. Not that we have Halloween themed songs, but we have songs that can kind of fit into that motif. And the band actually has released a couple of Christmas songs. I mean, to me, it checks every box that I want to check, right? Like it scratches my creative itch. And it also allows me to be a working paid musician. This is something that I don't think enough young bands really embrace. I think there's sort of this divide when you're younger that you either have to be an original band or a cover band. I would say throw that out the window. Like if you're considering jumping in a van and touring for 2 or 3 weeks, play a basement show in Pittsburgh, play a bar like a small original bar in Cleveland, and when you get to Chicago, play 3 or 4 sets and make $500-600. It'll help the tour a lot. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
And if you can make more than that, make more than that. If you can take a private gig, or a corporate event and make a couple thousand, that makes it a lot easier to be a musician. Yeah, I would definitely recommend it. I certainly enjoy it. I think you just have to you have to do it in a way that remains true to yourself, right? Like you don't want to get good at things that you don't want to do. So if you don't want to play Sweet Caroline, then don't play Sweet Caroline. But we all enjoy the Beatles and we all really are fond of the Christmas holiday. So, we do things that make us happy.
That sounds great. I feel like I know what you were saying about younger bands sort of let this elude them that you have to be one or the other, but I feel like there is a resurgence in appreciation for doing covers, and it has become my impression that that's the case, like maybe in the last year or less, and I'm not sure why, but I keep hearing a little bit more about it here and there, and oftentimes from musicians that I wouldn't think would even be talking about cover bands. And I'll tell you, it's actually probably because I've been listening to interviews on Pushkin podcasts with the interviews that Rick Rubin does with various artists. And I know at least a couple of times there, I've heard huge names talk about, these bands that were peers and, they were playing covers. Maybe they started that way, but maybe it brings me back to the comment that you made that this happened a long time ago and not so much anymore. However, there's a vibrant cover scene in a lot of towns, including the one I'm currently in. So I think it's a sort of a great inadvertent or unintentional tip that, it kind of goes back to, I had an instructor for one of the brief stints of formal education I did for drumming that I shared with another drummer. And he had reminded me that the guy, and I've heard this from other people too, who have had any formal instruction whatsoever. And they'll usually, especially for drummers maybe, but they usually tell them like, take any and every gig, especially in the beginning. And in fact, I was re-listening to a conversation for an episode that's coming out tomorrow, and it was asking about getting better gigs. And the guy had said, and the first thing he started saying was, I think in the beginning, you have to just like take anything and treat it like it's everything. And I thought that was great advice.
Yeah, that is great advice. It's like anything else, right? Like moderation is always the key, and you always have to strike a balance. Balance is one of my favorite words, right? Even with the WAG, like there are people who come up to me and they're like, "Oh, I know you. You're the drummer for the Beatles band." And like, we're actually not a Beatles band. Like you kind of have to be careful sometimes with perception.
Yeah.
Again, there's the aspect of being able to sustain what you do, right? And I can tell you right now, like if I could go back and change anything about when I was in my 20s, I would have done a lot more cover gigs, because I'd rather get paid to play the top 40 than to get paid to sit at a desk, and
Sure.
And listen, there's nothing wrong with that. I've done it for many, many, many years, but hindsight being 2020, you can either, like I said, play those top 40 songs and get paid for it and then use that money to fuel what you do, or you can spend 40 hours a week in a cubicle or whatever your job is,
Yeah. Do you guys sell any merch?
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell me what you do. Tell me what you do and what works, and any tips you can offer to bands that want, or artists that either keep thinking about haven't done it or they want to do it better.
Here's what you should do. You should go to our website, thewagband.com, and you should reach out to Alicia. Alicia Van Sant is the singer, and one of this, we all sing, but she sings and plays keys in the band. And she's going crazy with this Cricut device that allows her to put like vinyl lettering and designs on anything. And she's just, we now have WAG keychains and WAG mugs, and just everything. And she makes it all herself, and it's at a very cost-effective price point. And then on top of that, we do the typical, the t-shirts, and I think there's frisbees, and we're one of the bands that is holding on to the old school tradition of actually having a physical album. We're not just digitally distributing it. So, we'll have CDs, and I'm really pumped about this, Rabanzo. We are releasing the new album on vinyl. I'm a big vinyl guy, and I like to think it's not in like the trendy hipster way. Like when I was a kid, there was actually vinyl. Like I remember vinyl. So I'm really pumped that we're going to be offering that this year. Generally speaking, though, t-shirts are pretty big items for us, and then copies of the album.
That's cool. Yes.
Yeah.
Vinyl is very cool. And you know what? This episode I mentioned that's coming out tomorrow, the guy mentioned this Cricut, which I'd never heard of. His wife has one, and she's an amazing photographer. And so he hasn't really started doing much in merch, but he's been thinking about it, and we talked about it. And the first thing he mentioned, well, one of the first things was, yeah, my wife has this Cricut, so she makes this. I didn't even know what it was, and I failed to ask. And I'm sitting here looking for it. What do you know their website?
I got to be honest with you. I don't know anything about the device. All I know, it's an insect that's actually like putting letters on things. I don't know. But I tell you what, man, it's turned her into like Gene Simmons. Like we can now merchandise anything.
I will have to reach out to her, and thanks for sharing that on our recording here for anyone else who is bold enough. Okay, one more question and a comment before that. I
Sure.
didn't want to not mention that I was listening to, I may have said this to you before, so I'm sorry if I'm repeating
It's
myself,
okay.
but I was listening to your last solo release 2019, and if I'm not mistaken, I heard your voice on the second song of the preview you sent me for the WAG, right?
Yeah, I sing on a little bit of the album. I can't remember how many songs I sing on, but we all sing in the WAG, yeah.
Well, I just wanted to tell you you're a really great singer, and on top of
Oh,
being a really great drummer, you just have to be like like a gem for a band to find.
oh wow, that's so sweet of you. And being that we're on the topic of sharing compliments here, just before we started doing this, I happened to be scrolling through my Instagram and I saw a beautiful rendition of Blackbird by the Beatles, and you did an amazing job singing that. So right back at you, my friend.
Oh, thank you. I almost didn't publish it, and the guitar player who accompanied me is like, "Why?" And I'm like, "Well, I just made some mistakes on it, and I think I could do it better." And so my wife had come home from business, said, "Watch this and tell me if." I told her I was kind of worried about it, tell me if I should release it. And she just kind of smiled. She goes, "It sounds great." So, and
Yeah,
she'll
it's
tell me
beautiful.
usually like, you could do better." So, but thank you. But thank
it's
you. I really appreciate that.
it's important to have someone like her in your life.
Okay, and here's my last question.
Sure.
I have to be selective here. I'm looking at yeah, I'm just going to ask this one. I bet you have something to say. On the social media marketing front, is there anything that you can share that you've learned recently or in the past, or just any tips you can offer? It's and I ask it, maybe you get asked a lot, I don't know, but I ask it because I did a survey earlier in the year of with my email list, and this was one of the things that people said they wanted to get a little better at or to learn about. Do you have anything to share?
Oh, yeah, I'm a bad person to ask this question because just full transparency, I hate it. Like I'm not a fan of social media. I think it's making us dumber. But I also recognize that it's the best avenue to get your art seen and heard. B, I think it's a great tool for being able to connect with the people that support you. I love that aspect of it. But I'm going to say this. I'm not going to give any hints or tips as to this is what you should do to get better engagement. I don't have those answers. I can tell you that I have a 12-year-old daughter and she is highly critical of my social media. And I'm not joking. I, I think I'm going to put her in charge of my social media. I
Heck
I
yeah.
I think she has a better understanding of what can drive engagement. Personally, I like to use my social media as almost like a business card. I like to use it to show people that A, I have a certain talent, B, that I use that talent a lot, and C, that I and the people that I work with and the people that I perform for have a pretty good time whenever I'm doing whatever I'm doing. And that's really what I try to focus on. Um, I think nowadays, though, there's all sorts of things with like the types of background music that you use with your posts, the times of day that you're posting, the different types of hashtags that you can use. There's all different things that you can do to game the algorithm, and I'm just not interested. I'm sorry. Like I know that your podcast is about helping musicians maximize all the tools that they have, and I really wish I had a better answer for you, but that's the truth.
No, I think that's good. And you know what? Sometimes people love to hear echoed their own sentiment. And in fact, I have a love-hate relationship with it. The for me, the only good parts are a couple things you've mentioned, sharing art. And we have to be careful with that too, especially if you're like a physical media artist.
Hmm.
It's arguably better ways to do it, but it's a great way of connecting with people. I mean, I think you and I connected on social media some time ago back in 2019.
Exactly.
And, they're depending on how much you engage in trying to have meaningful relationships. I have a few people that I wouldn't know otherwise. I mean, there's a lot of people I'm acquainted with that I wouldn't know otherwise that are related to the podcast. And some of them, like yourself, are just really a joy to have conversations with, and, people I would hang out with. And then, there are these other ones that we meet too that, they just stay in touch constantly because they just you become friends, and they're in a place on the planet that you might otherwise never meet them. But yeah, it's a great discovery tool, but yeah, it sure is a shit show at the same time.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's it. And it's very hard. I'll be honest with you, I'm addicted to it. I check my phone and my social media on my phone way too often. I'd be lying to you if I told you that I don't check to see how often people are commenting or liking a post. And I don't enjoy that about my personality. So, maybe I just have my own personal hang up with it. If you can be in a place where you can work it and you can use it to your advantage and have a healthy relationship with it, then there's no reason why you shouldn't. It's just, I have to be careful with it. But I also have different goals than maybe some of your listeners. If your listeners are looking to be, famous singer-songwriters or famous performers, they're going to have a different set of goals than someone like myself is. My goal is to work. My goal is to be propping other people up so that they can have that type of attention. I don't necessarily need or want that type of attention. So maybe that's another thing to kind of keep in mind when you approach your social media. Like, what are your goals?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've heard that advice before. All good stuff. Thanks, Joshua, again, for spending time with me. I feel, again, lucky that we were forced or I was forced to ask you if you could do it again because of the problems I had with our last recording. But so let's see, thewagband.com, joshuavanness.com. And I'm going to put a link to These Boots Are Made for Walking video in the show notes, and the Cricket once I make sure that I have the right website. And hey, man, it was a pleasure talking with you.
Man, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
If you do not yet have a website for your music, check out Bandzoogle. It was created to help musicians and bands build their website and manage direct-to-fan marketing and sales. Bandzoogle features amazing design options, a commission-free store to sell merch, music, tickets, and you get detailed fan data. And there's more. Try it free at bandzoogle.com. Use the promo code ROBONZO, that's ROBONZO, to get 15% off your first year. You've been listening to The Unstarving Musician with Robonzo. That's me. Please follow us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. You can find links and mentions for this episode at unstarvingmusician.com. Thanks again for listening. Peace, gratitude, and a whole lot of love.